This pumpkin cake is so simple to make. It's higher in protein, it does not use much sugar, and it is soft and airy and fluffy and just absolutely delicious. Everything can easily be made in one dish, which is my favorite part because no one likes to clean up a bunch of dirty dishes. And it's just super quick. It's kind of like a dump cake. Throw everything in, mix it up, and it'll be ready to go. So the first step here is to add some butter. What I do is I add some butter and then I'm going to quickly microwave it. This allows it to coat the bottom of the pan so that it doesn't all stick. And it's also needed in the recipe, so two birds with one stone. Next, I add the maple syrup. Since the butter is a little warm, I don't want to put the eggs in it right away. I don't want to potentially cook part of the eggs. So by adding some maple syrup, I'm kind of cooling it down. This is the only sweetener in this recipe aside from chocolate chips, and I put about a quarter to a half a cup. I'm now going to add 4 eggs. I try to find recipes that use a lot of protein like eggs, and sometimes I know that with cakes or with any baking, eggs can make things a little dense, but this cake turns out absolutely delicious and it stays airy even though there are 4 eggs. I'm going to add some kefir to it. I just had some kefir on hand. I got this kefir at Costco. You could also use yogurt. I've done that too, but I just use whatever's available in my fridge. I really like making recipes that use just basic ingredients that I often have available. That way I know that if I need to whip something up quick because my kids are hungry, or if we're going to be gone for the day and I need to bring snacks, this is something that I can turn to and it's always a big hit. I'm going to make sure to mix these wet ingredients well. Breakfast cakes seem to be my go-to recipe these days. I actually used to make a lot of muffins, but it became very tedious and time-consuming to sort of put all the ingredients in the individual muffin slots, and also cleaning the muffin pan I was not a huge fan of. I would forget to buy the little muffin liners, and it just became much more of a time-consuming task to make muffins. Also, I found that my kids would often eat half of a muffin. I know I could buy those mini muffins, but then it's going to take even longer for me to get the whole thing done. So I started making cakes instead. I can cut things into the size pieces that I like. I can change up the ingredients a bit more. I don't have to clean any large pans with many different holes. It's just a much easier process, and I can dump everything in the same pan that I'm going to be baking it in. So I just added all of the dry ingredients. There was about 3/4 of a cup of flour. I added 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. The recipe is in the description too. Here I'm grabbing some salt. I don't normally measure a lot of my ingredients. I tend to just eye it. I know for some baking projects it's really important to be very exact with your measurements, but honestly for this cake you can be off by quite a lot and it will still turn out delicious. I have adjusted these ingredients many times. I've used more of one or less of the other depending on what I have on hand, and it has always been a big hit. I just make sure that before I bake it, it's a certain consistency. I'm going to make sure to thoroughly mix this. I don't want there to be any dry parts of the flour. I will mix it several times to make sure that everything is fully incorporated. I don't know what it is about mixing, but it seems to amuse all my children. They always want to be the one to mix, and if I would have let my son mix this right from the start, he would have spilled flour everywhere. So I'm trying to quickly mix it so I can give him a quick turn. I often don't get much free time in the kitchen, especially in the morning when my kids want to be kept busy. They want to participate in anything that I'm doing. So a cake that doesn't take a lot of time and doesn't leave me with a huge mess to clean up is a win. Here I'm adding some hemp hearts. This is an optional ingredient, but I do recommend adding it if you really want to up the protein. My kids don't even know the hemp hearts are in there, and it just gives them some added protein. Now I'm adding the oats. I add about a cup here. We go through a lot of oats in our household. Most mornings my kids like to have oatmeal for breakfast, and what I do is I actually make the oatmeal and then I whisk a couple eggs into it, or I temper the eggs with the oatmeal, and whisk it in just to add some protein to their breakfast. So I'm always trying to make sure that they get enough protein in their meals because, as we all know, kids constantly are hungry, and I want to make sure that they're well nourished. And protein really helps them stay full for longer so they don't constantly come back asking for snacks. Now, my other two kids are coming near because they know that at this point I will be adding chocolate chips soon. I'm always on the lookout for fast and easy recipes, but I do know that they have to have a level of sweetness so that my kids will eat them. So, although I've tried many different healthy recipes, sometimes I find I make them, and if I don't make them sweet enough or sort of add a couple sweet elements to entice my kids to eat it, it will be left on their plates and it will just be a waste of ingredients. This is where I realized I almost forgot to add the main ingredient, the pumpkin. So I have this pureed pumpkin that I left in my fridge. It is from pumpkins that we grew in the summer and that we got from our garden. I still have a lot of pumpkins to process and go through, but I'm glad to be able to use this in a delicious breakfast cake for my kids. I will be making a lot of pumpkin recipes in the near future and sharing them. Here I try the batter. I tend to always try the batter for things that I'm baking. It gives me an idea how sweet it is and whether I need to add some more maple syrup, and allows me to potentially balance out certain flavors that I think may be off. It's always a balance between finding a recipe that uses ingredients that are good for them, that provide them with enough protein, that are not too sweet or filled with sugar, but also that they enjoy. I added some chocolate chips to the top because that will be the first thing that everyone sees, and who doesn't love some chocolate chips? This is ready to bake now. I will pop it in the oven and it'll be ready in 35 to 45 minutes. I try to let it cool completely before cutting it, but that doesn't always happen. So here's the final product, and it rose very nicely. It is soft, it is fluffy, it is not a dense cake at all, and it tastes delicious. My kids would also agree.